the Endorphin Pro 1 was actually the first super shoe that I ever owned and reviewed, but when they released the Endorphin Pro 2, there weren't really many big changes to it, so it didn't really interest me, so I didn't pick it up. And then the Endorphin Pro Plus did interest me, but it was just the Endorphin Pro with a simpler, lighter upper for an extra $50, so I definitely did not pick that up. But Saucony is back with the Endorphin Pro 3, and we get a huge redesign here, so I knew I had to try it out. So I did buy the shoe with my own money, but I've done a few runs in it, so I'm ready to give you my first impressions. Let's go ahead and start with the specs. The heel has 39.5 millimeters, and the forefoot has 31.5, which gives us an 8 millimeter heel-to-toe drop. The weight comes in at 7.2 ounces, and I put this in the carbon-plated trainer category. So let's find out what's new in the shoe overview. The upper gets super minimal and light on the Endorphin Pro 3, simplifying it even more than the Endorphin Pro Plus. The midsole gets an extra 4 millimeters of cushioning in both the heel and forefoot, and it still uses Power Run PB. However, it feels a little different than what they used on the previous models. Embedded in the midsole is still a full-length S-shaped carbon fiber plate. The outsole is the same rubber compound as before, but it is now a little thinner and also has a new lug pattern. So an important question is the fit. And for the Endorphin Pro 1, I went true to size with my normal size 12, and that fit great. But with the Endorphin Pro 3, I actually have a 12.5, which I was worried might be a little big, but it actually fits really nicely and gives you some extra room in the forefoot. If you're somebody that wants that kind of more racing flat, a little more snug feel, then true to size will probably be good for you. But I think either true to size or half a size up will be good depending on your preference. So now let's talk about my first impressions of this shoe. So first off, talking about the foam. Before, Power Run PB was always one of the firmer super foams to me and wasn't as, soft and bouncy. But I think that with this version having that increased stack height, and I swear they did something with the pellets on this one that made it a little different, but does feel a lot softer and bouncier while still being stable. It is still definitely firmer than a lot of other super foams, but that doesn't take away from the energy return you feel in the shoe. It does still have their speed roll rocker, and I thought that it worked well. It made me activate my glutes, and it felt smooth no matter what pace I was going at. Now, talking about this upper, I was a little concerned at first because I'd say it's one of the thinnest or on the thinner side of any of the marathon racers I have, and it has like pretty much no padding, just a tiny bit in the heel back here. So that did worry me a little bit. However, once I actually got it laced up and started running in it, my foot felt secured and I didn't really have any issues with it. I keep going back and forth if I'd rather have like the Endorphin Pro 1 upper on here that was a little more structured or not, but with how minimal this thing is, it saves a lot of weight, so you're still able to have that thick cushion with a lightweight shoe. So I think Saucony made the right call in going for the lighter shoe instead of kind of a more cushioned upper. So the few runs that I did with this shoe, one of them was at marathon pace, and I felt like this shoe really came alive at that pace. It was feeling really bouncy, really energetic. When I slowed it down a little bit for a more moderate or medium paced run, I felt like it did firm up just a little. However, it still was super cushioned and super bouncy, so it was still a comfortable shoe. I think it just really excels at that race pace. Alright, now I'm going to do a couple of quick comparisons. And first up, I'm going to compare the Endorphin Pro 3 to the Endorphin Pro 1. So before, I would never consider the Endorphin Pro for any of the marathons I was racing or just like longer distance up-tempo training. I just thought the shoe was a little too firm and didn't have enough cushioning for my preferences. So I did love racing this shoe for like 10Ks and 15Ks and that type of thing, where I thought it was nice and snappy. But this shoe definitely changes that for me with the improved comfort of the midsole, the extra stack height cushioning. This makes it a real winner for marathons for me. And I think that if you have a pair of the Endorphin Pro 1, 2 Plus, whatever, I think that it could be a good companion shoe to the Endorphin Pro 3, where you use this one for some of that speedier stuff and those kind of shorter distance races, while this one's going to be for those long runs, those marathon distances and above. The next shoe I'm going to compare it to is the New Balance FuelCell RC Elite V2. These shoes actually are very similar, and the Endorphin Pro 3 reminds me a lot of the RC Elite V2, and it's kind of funny actually, like they even kind of look a little bit the same with like the outsole design and the hole in the bottom. But anyways, I think that going head to head with the uppers, I do prefer the upper of the New Balance shoe, just because it is still light and breathable, but it does give you that extra padding and extra security in the heel, while like I've mentioned, this one's super minimal and there's almost nothing there. As for the midsoles, I think it's pretty much a tie. Like they're both super bouncy, super energetic, super foams. They both have the plates in there that work great with foam. However, I think that the Endorphin Pro 3 might edge it out just a little bit because it does have a Power Run PB sock liner, and that honestly feel like does make a big difference with kind of the overall ride and the feel of the shoe. Honestly though, overall I'd say either is a great choice, and it kind of just depends on your preference on what you're looking for in an upper. So like I was saying earlier, when I thought of racing a marathon, the Endorphin Pro never popped into my mind. I had a list of other shoes I'd rather wear in front of it, but now with the Endorphin Pro 3, that changes, and this, I think, is making its way towards the top of the list. I'm going to have to do a full video kind of comparing my favorite carbon-plated marathon racers and my thoughts on them. But anyways, I have actually really enjoyed the Endorphin Pro 3, and it's contender for marathon racer for me. Have you tried this shoe yet, or are you going to pick it up? Let me know in the comments down below. I have a lot more miles, a lot more runs to put on this shoe, and I will give you my final verdict in my full review. Subscribe so you don't miss that, and as always, keep on running.